So now I am finishing up with my road to ECT, which was in 2001. Um, I had described the intrusive thoughts, mania, mixed episode, and then one day opening my eyes one morning and being unable to move. Just empty brain, can't move, catatonic, just boom, boom. I guess, it was 2 weeks straight with no sleep whatsoever, with a racing mind of horrible thoughts and the stress and the tension. Can't eat, wandering the streets at night just because it felt so weird knowing the whole world was asleep and I was not. Not able to work, not able to have a relationship with anybody. And so I think I just, like, out of exhaustion. I mean, obviously, for me, the depression always follows the mania, and pretty much always is like if the mania was really bad, then the depression's going to be real bad. Usually pretty equivalent. Um, anyway, so there I was like that for a long time. I just couldn't cope. Everything stressed me out. Couldn't go to work. I was a mess. And I had been living with my fiance of 4 years, and he had been through college and decided he didn't want to do what that degree was and wanted to go back to school to do electronic engineering. So the agreement was that I would work, as a nurse and pretty much support us. He would have some part time work while he went to school. And then when he graduated, um, it would be my turn to go back to school because I wanted to do something with English literature. So that was the agreement before I got sick. And then we didn't have any money because I couldn't work, you know. I mean, as time, I used up like funds from work and um, I'm getting an unemployment. I don't know. It's all I just know that for a year or more, I was in this rotating, like those revolving doors, um, where I would be completely immobile, refuse to move, get dressed, shower, anything, and then suddenly have fits of not just sobbing, but howling, crying. Just like I was in so much pain that, because what happened was the pain part came later. It happened when we had agreed that 2 weeks after he graduated is when I had went to my mom's house to live so he could finish up school. And 2 weeks after he graduated, we had agreed that 2 weeks after we graduated, that he graduated, that I would be coming back to live together. And and that's all I was thinking about. I had a calendar. I was marking off the days, and it was like the week before I was supposed to go back, and I was really looking forward to it. And I mentioned it in a phone call, and then he just said, "Well, I'm not really sure if I want you to come back." So, I'm like, and I had to pin him down for him to actually say what he was saying. He kept saying stuff like, "I'm not sure I want you." It was just really lame on his part. And I just completely lost it. And I wasn't mourning the loss of him. I was mourning the loss of what I had in my head for so long that my life was going to be like. And everything had been falling into place until bipolar hit. And I felt used for me to support him through school, and then I'm not going to get my chance like we agreed, and I felt robbed and lost. So I was in mourning. So after that, I was alternating between the catatonic depression and just wailing, just howling, crying, and until I was so exhausted, I just was limp. And then for weeks, obviously, I did get up to use the bathroom, but I was hard pressed to take a shower, and my poor mom was trying to push me every day, but it just made me feel worse. It was awful. It was just awful. It was beyond depression. So, at some point, after we're talking a year, more than a year, that I have not come out of this state of, and from going from flat and catatonic and can't think, to excruciating pain and sobbing, and so I get to this point, and this doctor, I was put on all different kinds of medication, and the problem, those might have worked if I didn't have the events that took place and were taking place. I'm living with my parents. I felt I'm an adult dependent on my parents. I felt awful, low self-esteem, no self-esteem, even if the medication were to help the depression, I still would not have been better, I don't think, because of what I was going through. If somebody dies, giving them some pills isn't going to make the grief not happen. And I was in therapy, of course. And so this one doctor, just says, to try we need to try, or I don't even know how he put it. I don't even know how it came up. It certainly wasn't me. But what uh, I was desperate. I was desperate. And so I agreed to it. Um, out of pure, I didn't, I felt trapped because I didn't want to live that way anymore, but at the same time, I was suicidal. So I didn't know how I was supposed to live feeling this way. So um, I wasn't suicidal, but I was not participating in life. And my thought process was just none. Affect was flat. I couldn't think of any words when I tried to talk. I couldn't even answer questions sometimes. I mean, I was in a very desperate state, condition. And I also think they were confused about what was actually going on with me, because this is before I got to a good doctor. Um, because he called in another doctor and they were saying I had OCD, and I'm like, well, I might have. Looking back, like I said in my previous videos, I had OCD symptoms, but only when I was in the midst of my bipolar. When my mood is normal, it's not there. So I don't consider myself or consider my primary disorder to be obsessive compulsive. It's bipolar. So I just think they ran out of ideas, and it was obvious I was still very, very sick. And so here's the conundrum. If you if you're a doctor and you're asking a patient about something as serious as ECT, well, obviously they're in a bad state to say yes or no, in an informative way. Like think about it, and well, if you can't think, how accurate is your yes or no going to be? So, but it was out of desperation that I did agree to it. I was told that, and I signed a paper that said I understood that it could cause temporary, like during the treatment, um, temporary amnesia, like of that day, or, so, or hours surrounding the day that you had it. And there wasn't anything about long-term effects. So, excuse me. So what it was, I don't, I know I was inpatient for a while. I didn't know if I was inpatient for all. I got, like, what you do is you get a series, like one or two a week for so many weeks. total, I think I got 6 treatments. Um, and I remember being in the hospital and being, well, in case you don't know, I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. Um, they are inducing a seizure in your brain, and it's meant to kind of jolt your neurotransmitters back into order. There are people that swear that this is the best treatment for them and that it is necessary in some cases. So you go into a room and there's like a nurse there and some other people and the machine, and you get an IV, and they give you something that burns in your IV, and so you're unconscious for the treatment itself. And they put the doohickeys sorry, if you're getting bilateral, which causes more issues with memory and stuff, the side effects, you get a one here, a node or something like that in here. So the current goes from the machine and zap to both lobes. For less side effects, but still good results for some people, I guess. They do unilateral, which is a node here, and I think a node either in the back or the center of your head, but it will just go, the electric current goes from, like here to here, so it's only affecting this lobe and not both lobes. And I was told that I got unilateral lobe. So you don't remember it happening. I believe they put a cuff, like a blood pressure cuff, on your leg, the lower part of your calf. And see, the medicine they give you even though your brain is having the seizure, they give you medicine to keep your body from flip-flopping around on the table. But they have to know that you're actually getting the current. So they blow up this blood pressure thing, tourniquet thing, so that when they give you the medicine, it doesn't quite get to that foot. And when they flip the switch, you're not bouncing around like on TV in movies, but your foot will bend and stuff, so they can tell that you are getting the current. So anyway, afterwards, you kind of wake up, and I think it was in like a recovery space, or stayed there until I was awake enough to be rolled back to the unit, the psych unit. And I was weak and confused, and was I just did what the nurses told me. I felt empty and robotic. I didn't like it, how I was feeling. But I couldn't make any decisions about not liking it. each time I got a treatment, the after effect was worse. I do remember this one incident. In like after a few hours, it would get better. Um, but each time I don't know. I did witness this. There was a woman there getting ECT, and she had depression, and she didn't talk to anybody. She looked very anxious too. She looked like she hadn't showered in a while. She just looked like someone with really bad clinical depression. And she had just gotten done with her ECT treatment, and someone came to talk to her, and they were trying to get her to sign papers so that her brother would be able to make decisions about her medical decisions. And they're asking her this right after an ECT treatment, and I got this suspicion that it was planned that way, so she would be kind of out of it and would be more likely to sign. And I was so happy to see that she pushed the paper away and wouldn't sign it. So I one of the times I was so out of it when I got back, I I remember my bed being wet, and I didn't know why it was wet until the nurse came, and and then I kind of put it together that I um, had wet my bed, and um, I was in. I was so embarrassed, and later when I remember, like when I was able to feel anything after the treatment, and that was just awful. That was embarrassing, and um, anyway, I I did end up with long term problems with my memory. It took away giant chunks of my past, particularly my childhood. What I remember is what other people tell me, and that's my memory. I don't really remember it happening, or from pictures, but it's just like a blank. And um, a little bit of it came back over long periods of time. I have trouble I, for I still do this, but it used to be worse. My short term memory. I have a bad short term memory. But it was so bad that there were post it notes. I had all kinds of systems and post it notes and stuff for me to get through the day and live somewhat independently. Um, there was a point where I moved into an apartment, and it was like for people that needed a little assistance. Um, I still have trouble. Like, I can look at the clock and see what time it is. I have trouble adding and subtracting time. Fortunately, in nursing, we went by military time, and that's a lot easier for me to add and subtract time because the numbers don't repeat themselves. But, like, if we would have someone at the shelter, then I managed work, because they got in trouble. What is that word? Community service. I was supposed to write down how many hours they'd been there. And if they'd been there like some sort of odd amount, like an hour and 15 minutes, I would have the hell of a time trying to figure out, I can't, they're like, I came at 1:15 and I left at 3:45, and I'm like, oh my God. Because it's really hard for me to do the math. And then, um, also, I have trouble with directions. Um, Now I understand that where the sun sets is westish and where it rises is eastish. And I have a compass in my car. It's part of the little dashboard thing. Um, but when someone says go south, go north, go east, go west, um, or just you go to the fire department, you make a left. I'm gone. That's it. I can't do it. It's and if especially if it has more than one anything that has more than one step. That's what I used to anything that had more than one or two steps. I had to write every single little step for me, out everything I did all day. That's gotten better, but directions still aren't better. Turn left at the birch tree at the corner. You know, so I rely on like it's. I have lived in this town for a very long time, and I still don't get a sense of where this other town is in relation to me, or which way to turn to get to a town I go to all the time. So that that part of memory is very difficult. When something becomes you do it without thinking, then sometimes it gets I finally get it right, but it can take years. Um, Money, I have trouble with counting money, adding and subtracting money. So giving change can be difficult. It was bad at the shelter that I managed, but with the dog training, it's not that bad. I try to make it as easy as possible. So I, charge nice even numbers. Um, but like cash register, I couldn't work at a cash register. I mean, the thing tells you how much they get back, but you have to count it out loud, and I'm not very good at that. Okay, my service dog's here. He's getting ready to tell me it's time for me to feed them. Anyway, um, it's very difficult for me to new information to become on. Okay, so new information, which is my short-term memory. It has a lot. It takes a long time and frequently to become short-term, if it ever does, but to become long-term memory or intermediate memory. Um, Sometimes some doctor's visits, my mom goes with me because my memory is really bad. Like I don't know when things started, when I had what surgery. That's part of the memory I lost. Um, like, you would think I would know when I had my craniotomy surgery, and I had a hysterectomy. I have no idea when. Um, my 40s, I think. Um, and you'd think I would remember because they diagnosed as really bad endometriosis that I never knew I had. So, things like that. Um, which, and I make one more video about a couple of things I came across. Well, one to help keep us organized. So I have to write things down a lot in the same place, in the same, I have to really, I have to, and I do a lot of apologizing. I know you already told me, we've been through this like 500 times, but you have to tell me again, what, um, what happens when this and this happens. It's just annoying and frustrating. So and I go to the doctor. I'm not a very good historian. And that's some people have had opinions about my opinions of ECT and how I think it should be avoided, and I think it shouldn't be offered or exists. I mean, I think it's has more side effects than they're letting on, and I think it does more harm than good in the long run. And we've got so many other options now than when I had mine. So, no, this does not happen to everybody who has ECT. No, it doesn't. But it does happen to some people. And I will continue on telling my story and what I feel. So, regardless of what anyone else says to me, it saved my life. I'm like, well, good for you. How many people have deficits now? So, that was my journey to ECT. And after, a long time after I had moved and I had a new doctor, and I was telling her, my history, and I mentioned ECT, she said, I'm not really I don't really remember what the conversation was, but she said, how could you let anyone do that to you, or something like that. And the way I'm saying it makes it sound like she's blaming the victim. It wasn't that way at all. It was said in a compassionate, sympathetic, kind of surprised tone. So, so I think there are probably doctors out there that, just like me, they're on one or the other side of the fence. And if you were to ask me if did it help me any? I got 2 weeks of mild improvement, and that's it, of my depression. It was not, would I do it again? No. I would continue to feel horrible until my body and mind naturally moved out of it. Medication. Um, I'm stronger now when I'm depressed. I can force myself to do things better because I understand it better. I don't think I got enough teaching about my disorder, at the time of ECT. I can get to feeling really bad but I understand. And I know that I've been here before and I've come out of it. And I just got to push through. Um, in the beginning, it that you think it's going to be like that forever. You're going to feel like that forever. And so I would never um, agree to that again, for sure. Okay, so hey, if you have any questions, go ahead and ask. I talked about this before. Um, I have one more video to do with an announcement, but I'm finished with the series of the ECT, um, and how I got there. All right, so good night.